So, welcome to yet another edition of the Blacknight podcast, brought to you by your host, Michele and his co-host, Jonathan, all the way from the US of A.
Hello.
So today, we're recording this today, it's Tuesday the 17th of May 2022, and today the weather here in Carlow is a little bit on the damp side. Translation, it's been pouring rain. Whereas Jonathan has just been telling me how lovely the weather is where he is, which has depressed me, and I am now not speaking to him.
It's going to be a quiet podcast.
It's going to be a very quiet podcast. No, I'm joking. The weather here was absolutely glorious at the weekend, but then it turned kind of Sunday evening, and I suspect we're not going to see that kind of summery stuff again for another few days. Anyway, so moving swiftly on. So we're in the middle of May. Hopefully the weather will start improve. It will improve a bit. I was driving around the countryside at the weekend and the place looked absolutely glorious. The birds were singing.
Oh, I was jealous.
The birds were singing. The grass was green. My tomato plants are growing so fast that if I don't do something about them, they're going to take over my green.
The time of year that makes living in Ireland worth it, right?
Yeah, that short period of time when the weather's great, and then before the gap in between winters.
Yeah, before the sun's only out for 6 hours a day and it rains for 6 months.
Exactly. Look, the countryside looked
No, I love Ireland.
The weather was absolutely glorious. So there's a few things going on for us internally and externally and everything else. The first item we had up today was .HIPHOP. So what's going on there, Jonathan, with .HIPHOP?
Well, .HIPHOP is another one of those domain names that has recently changed ownership. And in contrast to what we talked about last time with .sexy's price going up 9,900%, .HIPHOP has decided to lower their prices. So their business model is they want to sell domain names. So the wholesale price has dropped substantially, and now I believe it was like $100 wholesale before. Now it's a lot less. So now we can offer .HIPHOP for $24.99 for the first year. And yeah, so if you were dying to have a .HIPHOP domain and you didn't want to do it because the price is too high, now's your time. So
yeah, we'll see what happens with that. I mean, at the moment, I think .HIPHOP has less than 5,000 registrations, and obviously the price...
It'll have a lot more now that the price is lower.
Well, one would assume so. It's not a given, though. I mean, the problem with any domain extension, doesn't matter what it is if there's no demand or if you don't market it correctly or people aren't even aware of it,
right,
those registration numbers aren't going to move too much. Be interesting to see.
We'll roll out some marketing over the next few weeks to sort of let people know that the price has gone down. So hopefully we can sell a few, because we actually didn't have any on the books at all. So
no, I mean the thing is people sometimes say, how many domain names do you sell or which one, and the thing is, like, well, it's not the matter we sell them, we offer them for people to buy. Whether they buy them or not is a totally different conversation. It's available. Right. Yes, you could register it. Whether people will register or not, who knows?
Yeah.
So another one which I think is interesting is the .eu Web Awards. So these have been held now for the last few years, and it's obviously to enter you need to be using a .eu domain name for your website, and they have a number of categories in which you can enter. And it's not just a question of getting a lump of crystal or whatever to say that your website is nice. I mean, previously they used to do like this kind of marketing advertising campaign thing in Brussels Airport, but they've realized that might not work for all companies, because some companies just don't want to advertise there. So instead what they're doing now is they're offering like kind of a bit of kind of training and mentorship and other things. But I think it's an interesting awards thing. It's free to enter. If you have a .eu domain name and you have an active website with that .eu domain name, you can enter the awards. We'll be posting about that on our blog shortly, I suspect.
Oh, gee, I wonder.
Yes, exactly. No, it's an interesting one. The award ceremony is going to be held in a town that's not Brussels, in another town near Brussels in Belgium in November, and the day will be like they're doing kind of like a training day and everything, and followed by the award ceremony in the evening. I'm I will be in attendance, I suspect.
Oh, that sounds nice.
I'm back on the road, I think, as we mentioned previously. So last week I was over in Paris for meetings.
Ooh la la.
Yes, lots of oohs, lots of lahs. The weather in Paris last week was lovely, nice and hot. Unfortunately, the hotel I was staying in, the air conditioning was not working, so I basically was sleeping in a sauna. But we had some interesting meetings, talking a lot about DNS abuse and how providers could probably do a better job of dealing with it and what some of the issues are and things like that. I suspect there'll be some outputs from those meetings in the next few weeks. But it was great to kind of meet up with people again. I had dinner with some industry colleagues I hadn't seen in like 2 years, which was great.
I ate lots of lovely French food, I'm sure.
I did lots of things that you probably wouldn't want, things that would probably traumatize any vegan or vegetarians listening in. So I won't harp on too much about the lovely escargot I had. But no, it's interesting. It's like this week, I know friends are attending the Right meeting in Berlin, and there's also Domain Pulse, which is on in Bonn, also in Germany. Obviously, we're not attending either of those meetings this week. I'll be attending RIPE remotely, probably on Thursday morning. But no, it's great. I mean, there's a lot of people going back to events. I saw that a lot of our friends were up in Sweden last week as well. You know, things are coming back. Face-to-face events are back.
Yeah, the world has woken up.
It's nice. It's coming out of a long break and interacting with other human beings. It's nice.
How was it traveling with the various COVID regulations that are still in place? Was it easy? Was it a pain? You know, what did you have to do?
So the rules are constantly changing. Like the rules that were applied to France last week are no longer valid. I mean, they've changed them since as of yesterday. So last week in Paris, you would have had to wear face masks on public transport, and that would be like FFP2 medical grade kind of masks, not cloth masks. Paris airports, they expect you to wear masks once you enter the building, and they do seem to enforce that. I'm not 100% sure how well they enforce it, but they definitely seem to enforce it. And on flights to and from Paris, they did seem to take the entire face mask thing fairly seriously. But like I was told by the airline to fill out a locator form, and that I would need to have the hard copy of this when I was arriving in Paris, and nobody asked me for it. I had it done, I had submitted it online, but nobody asked me for it. So that was kind of pointless. But to attend meetings, it seems like a lot of places are doing some kind of testing. So we were doing antigen tests every morning before our meetings in Paris, and I hear from friends attending in Bonn that they had to do some kind of, have a kind of a proper medical test the day before, which is fine. I mean, you know, but once you've done that, then there's not much else really. So there you go. So that's kind of where we're at with that. So what else is going on? Well, I suppose we did talk about Mr. Musk previously, didn't we?
Yes, we have talked about him quite a bit, and now the whole situation, like, it's almost a parody of an Elon Musk thing. Like, it's self-parody. You know, will he, won't he? Is he actually going to buy Twitter now? Because now his stance now is he doesn't think Twitter is accurately reporting how many spam and bot accounts there are. And now he's publicly arguing with the CEO who he will fire when he takes over, you know, with poop emojis. It's real mature and real Elon Musky.
Yeah, I mean, is it a case of that he wanted everybody to think he was going to buy Twitter so that he'd get loads of media attention, but actually had no intention of ever doing it?
Yeah, I think maybe he thought it in theory it would be fun to buy it, and I think he's realized that it's a distraction he doesn't want, and he's trying to get out of it through fooling around. And I think that it's weird because, like, it's a situation that the SEC has ever had to deal with before. Here you have somebody trying to buy a publicly owned company on Twitter, driving their stock down with a poop emoji tweet and devaluing the company he's trying to buy. Like, I can only imagine the regulatory nightmare this is creating, and you know, yeah,
It's so weird, and it's also. I mean, well, the other thing I find kind of fascinating about it is how much time and energy people are wasting on reporting it.
yeah, that's another thing is the discourse around it, and it's like, yeah, you verged from people thought it was the end of the world, that oh my god, a billionaire bought a social media property, to people don't really care, then there's the Musk lover brigade who think and everything he does is glorious and amazing, and of course it would improve Twitter. And then you have the media breathlessly following every take 10 times a day, and it's exhausting. And I think if he does decide not to buy it, I think everybody will be happy somehow.
Well, it's kind of it's interesting with the contrasts, though. I mean, the CEO of Snap and his other half decided to pay off the student loans for 285 graduates at an arts college there the other day. There's no, this doesn't, it's, I mean, it's like, this is, not all rich people are narcissistic
Yeah.
muppets. I mean, I saw that and I was like, wow, that's actually such a cool thing to do.
Yeah, and you can contrast it with good billionaires like the Irish lads who started Stripe. They want to use their wealth for good, and Elon.
I mean, this Elon Musk seems to be using his wealth just to. I don't know. He doesn't seem to have done much in the way of good with it. I mean, he just seems to enjoy the media attention. Whereas, I don't know. I just see this kind of other thing like this Even Spiegel story, and I was like, wow, that's life changing. I mean, I know that.
Well,
for you lot.
To be fair, I don't want to sound like Paul over here. Our lovely CTO, is a big Elon Musk fan, and Elon Musk did make electric cars mainstream, but that was probably inevitability. Tesla just sped that up. He did make rockets reusable and put American astronauts back into space from U.S. soil. That was there are some good things he has done with the things that he's trying to do, but I don't see.
But I'm talking about stuff which is actually, tech for good, using your money for specific good.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't see how sending a rocket into space is good.
Well,
sure, you're advancing science, but that's just, it's an ego trip to say that it went from U.S. soil. Who cares whose soil it went from?
Well, Americans do, but that's beside the point. It goes back to when he sold PayPal and had a ton of money to spend, and he's like, I want to do rockets and send people to Mars, and that's really what's driven him. And it's really,
if he wants to send himself,
yeah.
If he wants to send himself to Mars, I'm totally down with that.
Yeah, and it'll be a nice 14-minute Twitter delay when he wants to tweet.
Well, it won't really matter. There's no oxygen there anyway. Okay, so another thing which I picked up in the last couple of days was an interesting story short story from Andrew over in Domain Name Wire. I don't know if you saw that, where he's suggesting that crypto companies start using registry lock. And I thought it was a lovely example of a clear use case for a service that a lot of companies just refuse to pay for.
Yeah, and as somebody who's had domains stolen, locking them is a very important thing to do. And
yeah, but this is registry lock, not registrar lock. You don't have registry lock.
I know, but
you could have registry lock if you wanted, if you're willing to pay for it.
But I don't want to pay for it, Michele.
That's the problem.
Well,
That's the problem.
And on the subject of crypto, I'm sure you've been delighted to see that what Bitcoin has lost half its value. NFTs are worth a fraction of what they started out being worth, and there's like an implosion happening in the whole crypto NFT space, and people are kind of like, oh, gee, who could have predicted that?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is one of these things. I mean, it's not so much that I'm delighted. It's more, I knew this was going to happen. and there was a massive bubble with NFTs. I mean, NFTs are just pure fluff. There's no substance to it. Like I think you could find a use for blockchain. I think you could find a use for NFTs. But what we've seen over the last 2 years is not that. I think what we've seen over the last 2 years is a lot of bored rich who are stuck in their basements with nothing to do all day, and they decided, alright, sure, look, we'll go off and we'll speculate with these bloody NFTs. Whereas now, with restrictions being lifted around the world, they're like able to go off and spend money on yachts and all those things again.
Actual works of art rather than a picture of one.
I mean, the entire thing, it's collapsed. I mean, some of the articles I've seen over the last couple of weeks, I mean, you're talking about like millions and millions of dollars in value being wiped off some of these things. And yeah, I mean, this was bound to happen. It was bound to happen. It was inevitable.
Tulip fever, man. The bubble always bursts.
Yeah. I mean, look, we'll see what happens, how this plays out. I mean, I think
a bunch of people got rich, but that was only a select few.
Well, this is the problem with any of these things. I mean, you look at some of the big NFT quote unquote projects or communities or whatever the hell they're calling themselves, and there's some stuff that's really headline grabbing. Then these people, they bought an NFT for, let's say, $100, and 6 months later they're able to sell it for $250,000. And a lot of people would have flocked to that, thinking that they could replicate it. But the reality is you can't. I mean, only a tiny percentage of any of those things will ever kind of realize that kind of value. And more importantly, there was no real underpinning value. I mean, I don't know. I never understood it. If it disappears and goes down in a ball of flames, I won't lose any sleep over it. My only regret is that I didn't buy myself a Bored Ape when they were dirt cheap and sell them a couple of months ago, because I could have paid off my mortgage in one fell swoop.
Yeah, it would have been nice to have set up a Bitcoin mining operation 15 years ago when it was new, and it was you had a first mover advantage. But the only people making money now on these things are the institutional people who are in control now, who are losing control as they lose value.
Well, you could still make money from from Bitcoin if you're the one selling the chips to help mine it. I mean, that's the thing with some of this is like the people who are offering the services around these things that enable people to play around. Yeah, they're still going to make some money.
Yeah, my son is real into gaming, and he wanted to buy a new GPU for his gaming PC, and you simply can't. And the ones that are available are over $1,000, and I'm like, dude, you gotta be happy with the GPU you have, because there is a shortage.
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing about technology is it's constantly evolving, and that's a good thing. And sometimes we see these things that are bubbles. I mean, we had the .com bubble a few years ago.
Then it corrected.
Yeah, it's not like with real property. It's not like that. I don't know. The NFT thing. I just never understood why anybody would spend as much as they did on it. It just made no sense to me whatsoever. So that's it left me confused, very confused. Now my computer has decided not to work. It doesn't want to work anymore. That's great. I do love technology so much. What else is going on? So a couple other things with it going on. There's a lot of regulation coming into the digital space at the moment.
And as an American who has trouble deciphering these documents you send me in my email, can you summarize these regulations for me so I can understand them?
No. I mean there's a few different ones, and I think some of them are probably well intended. It'll just be a matter of like this, but the stuff that has been thrown into them that makes them less palatable than what might have been intended by the original drafters. I mean, looking at this, so there's one which we recently looked at, which is around dealing with child abuse material online. I mean, in other words, child porn or whatever you want to call it. And okay, so obviously we would love to be able to help mitigate and stop the dissemination of that kind of material across the internet. It's pure evil. The people who are involved with that are evil. But the problem is that the current set of proposals would essentially break encryption, and that is, you see, the thing of this is there's this oversimplistic argument that comes from some people, like, oh, we'll put a backdoor in, but just for the good guys. And that's not how backdoors work. I mean, if you weaken encryption, you've weakened it. Whether your intentions in so doing were honourable or not is irrelevant. It's still weakened.
If anybody has a key, then everybody has a key potentially.
You've made it weaker. That's it. You've weakened it. I mean, there's no two ways about it. There's no way that those two concepts are compatible. You cannot put a backdoor in just for the quote unquote good guys without weakening the underlying technologies. And the thing about crypto and end to end is that we use it for so many other things. It's like the SSL ciphers. It's used for everything from validating that the RPKI on routers through to, well, even this call that we're recording on is using end-to-end, so that that somebody can't snoop on the call. It provides privacy, it provides security. It's how online banking works. It's how you're able to do your taxes online safely and securely. It's not an afterthought. It's key.
Right, and government. This isn't a new thing either. Governments have been trying to break encryption for probably since 9/11. They hate that there's things that they can't read or see. And
so I disagree with that. I would disagree with that characterization.
Yes, you would. Okay.
I would. I don't think that governments want to break encryption. I think what they want to be able to see things. They're two different things. But their intention is that they want to be able to see things in order to protect citizens, to protect their citizens, and to do all of those things. And sure, there are probably some governments who would like to break encryption. I'm not saying that not all governments are good, but in a lot of cases, they're all the same governments that want to be able to see this stuff in order to protect you also want a secure internet for other things. So I don't think it's fair to say that that governments are trying to break encryption, because that sounds like they're doing that willfully. They're actually set out to break encryption. What they actually want is they want to be able to stop bad things from happening. But I mean, you look at within the European Commission, you've got warring factions. You have law enforcement, security types who want certain things. You've got people and groups from supporting intellectual property rights, consumer protection, all that. And then you have privacy. And sometimes they run smack bang into each other, and there's a conflict between them. And that's why you end up with these kind of issues constantly. It's frustrating though, very frustrating. Because we have to push back, and we end up with these kind of weird obligations. Like, I've spent the last couple of weeks, well, actually a couple of months, I suppose, on various calls where we're talking about terrorism content, which is great fun. There's upcoming legislation that will require us to disable or remove access within like an hour of being told.
That sounds bonkers.
Yes, but if you think about it, and I can argue it both ways. I mean, if you were given the ability, let's just say for argument's sake, if you were able to take down a server or a site or a service, and in so doing you were able to stop a mass shooting, would you do it? Well, there you go. See, that's what this stuff is about. It's like if you look at how a lot of things have been organized over the last few years, there's an online element. But one of the more fascinating things is that in some bombings has been that, yes, they coordinated everything via email, but what's interesting is they didn't actually send the emails. They just left them in the drafts folder. So different people would log in to read the drafts folder to pick up the messaging. I mean, it's insane, but that's what you're dealing with. I think, look, the problem with a lot of these things is not cut and dry. It's not simply this is heavy regulation. A lot of regulations are for our own good. The problem is trying to make sure that they're implemented in such a way that you don't end up destroying the internet in the process. Like, from an American perspective, you like, quote unquote, light touch regulation.
Yeah. Unless you're in
But at the same,
unless you're in a right-leaning state and they've criticized you, and then you want heavy regulation.
yeah, which is contradictory.
Exactly.
I mean, the thing is, this is like, this in the European Union, we have certain laws in certain jurisdictions, and in some cases we have regulations that wouldn't exist elsewhere. But I mean, the American criticism of, oh, you're stifling innovation every time they see any kind of regulation we have. It's like, okay, but what's the alternative? The American alternative in some cases is the Wild West, where there's absolutely no regulation whatsoever.
Yeah, and as somebody who lives here, I can tell you that's not great.
No, it really isn't. I mean, I'm not saying that that the EC will get everything right. They don't. But the thing is, like, a directive is very different from a regulation. With a directive, each government has the opportunity to implement it as they see fit within the kind of spirit of the law. So I mean, look, there's a bunch of things going on there, and at the moment, I think there's a lot of stuff going on here in Ireland that doesn't really involve technology. That's probably distracting a lot of us. But it's these things are coming down the tracks, and we're going to have to try as a company to make sure that we are able to navigate any extra requirements that we might have. But it's not clear sometimes what those extra requirements are going to be.
Okay.
I've silenced you.
You silenced me.
Well, I mean, like, looking at NIS2, Article 23 within NIS2 is the one that speaks largely around domain name registration requirements. And it, in many respects, wants to undo a lot of the privacy protections that we got through GDPR.
Right. And it increases red tape for businesses, and yeah, I know it creates more work for everybody.
Well, yes, I mean, but also it's one of these things where you end up with an uneven playing field, because the reality is, like, from conversations I've had with various people, even in the last week around this, if a company that isn't 100% European based, that is, probably primarily a US based company or a Canadian based company, or from somewhere outside the EU, that has maybe a footprint in the EU, they can simply say, well, actually, we've nothing to do with that. Our offices in Dublin only handle payroll. We've no visibility on all this data that you're asking about. They can basically wash their hands of it. Whereas a company like ourselves, we can't. I mean, we're 100% Irish based. 1&1 in Germany can't wash their hands of us. OVH in France can't wash their hands of us. Gandhi can't wash their hands of us. All the European companies, we are European. We will be captured by whatever laws and regulations are passed within our relevant jurisdictions. But the international companies that still play in our backyard, in many cases, will be able to sidestep some of those obligations if they want to. We'll see. We'll see how that plays out. But
it'll be interesting as well to see when I go to DC for the I2 Coalition fly-in next month, what both sides of the aisle. The U.S. want to create new regulations on the internet, and they have conflicting reasons for doing so, but they all agree that they want to change the way things are. So it'll be interesting to see the approach we take versus the approach Europeans are going to take.
Yeah, and I mean this is part of the thing as well, is that and then you got the elephant in the room, like say talking about European regulations. One of the largest markets in the EU will now is no longer part of the EU. Sorry, one of the largest markets in Europe is no longer part of the EU. So it's not, can you completely ignore the UK?
Right, and didn't they basically cut and paste GDPR into their own case law?
Yes.
So it's
but the problem is that as these different regulations and things evolve in Europe, and by Europe I mean Brussels, there's no obligation for London to follow suit.
Yeah, there's going to start to be divergence, and then you're going to have to deal with both.
Yeah, and that it makes things a bit more complicated, because for the average punter, I mean, the lines are so kind of grey. It's like, oh, I'm buying from a UK brand in Ireland, which set of rules apply?
Right.
If you walk into a shop, obviously you're dealing with Irish law. But if you buy online from a UK retailer, you're actually going to probably end up being governed by both, which is bloody good.
Leads to all kinds of fun.
Oh, it does. It's great sport. So, look. I mean, there's no point in us getting too far ahead of ourselves. I mean, the thing with a lot of these regulations and things is that we still have time to work out the details as these things are implemented, and hopefully some of the more onerous obligations will go away. We'll see. So, anything else that we should care about at the moment?
Well, you put some upcoming blockbuster films on the talking points here. I don't know if you were serious, but
nah, maybe, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of interesting because Avatar, from a technology perspective, was so far ahead of its time when it first came out. What was it, more than 10 years ago? And there was this talk about the sequels, and then nothing happened.
Right.
Like, Avatar was released in 2009, was a massive success, and James Cameron was meant to be doing at least two sequels to it, and nothing happened.
Well, he took his time and even moved to New Zealand, and now there's supposed to be 4 sequels, and everyone's kind of like, dude, does everybody love Avatar that much? I mean, it's a pretty forgettable movie.
And that's the thing. I mean, how is Avatar a sequel? Sure. 2 sequels, maybe. 4 sequels seems a little excessive.
Well, and after what, 14 years now,
yeah,
is the audience going to show up? We'll see. I mean, it's opening at Christmas. It's a key time for films to come out. I mean, and it's still the first one was still the biggest movie that's the box office wise. So who knows? Maybe, I'm sure it will do better than the Fantastic Beast Harry Potter movies.
Or what was that? I watched an absolutely awful thing there last night. Was it Morbius?
Oh, I'm not even gonna bother. Ugh.
It was pretty awful. It was. But I mean, the one that I am actually kind of a bit more excited about is the sequel to Top Gun, which
Fly into the danger zone.
Well, I was 13 years old when the first film came out. Were you even born? Were you even born in 1986?
Yes, I was 2.
Okay. Yeah, so anyway, you definitely didn't see it in the cinema when it first came out, that's for sure.
In all honesty, and I'm going to have to turn in my man cred, I actually only sat and watched the movie all the way through last year.
That's okay. You're too young. That's just basically what's referred to as the baby movie.
But I loved it, and now I'm looking forward to the new one. So
yeah, well, the thing is, for those of us who saw the original when it was announced a couple of years back that it was going to be a sequel, it was like, ooh, this could be cool, or this could be an absolute disaster. And it's just interesting that the first few reviews are out, and they've been mostly pretty positive. So I'll be excited to see how it is.
I'm really surprised at how positive it is. And what about the injustice of you Europeans getting the movie a week before we do? What the hell is with that?
That happens a lot with certain ones. I mean, they tend to kind of they used to release them in Ireland or the UK a week or two in advance these days. I'm not sure why. I will get to see the new Top Gun in the next couple of days.
You're going to Belfast, right?
I'm going to go up to Belfast to see it.
Brand new IMAX screen.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember actually. When was the last time I went to see a film in the north? And I honestly can't remember. Probably quite some time ago. Oh look, they're doing some kind of premiere up there. I get to see it about a week or more in advance of everybody else, and that to me is like it's worth the trip. Plus, I get to go to Belfast for a night.
Well, on Wednesday I get to see the Downton Abbey movie early, so I've got that going for me.
See, now that would not interest me in the least. I mean, I'm sure. Look, I'm sure it's wonderful, but I've no interest in it whatsoever.
Yeah, it doesn't strike me as your type of show.
No. I mean, no. I'm not even going to bother trying to rationalize that. No, it just would not interest me at all. I mean, there's other films coming up, I'm sure, that over the next few months that we might actually agree on as being worth watching, but even if it is for different reasons. And then Netflix, of course, they're pumping out lots of content. They've got their new adaptation of The Lincoln Lawyer, which it's really, really good. It's really, really good. It's what's interesting.
I watched Operation. Oh, go ahead.
No, what I thought was interesting was that the guy playing the lead is actually Mexican, which is I was like, oh, okay, cool.
I watched Operation Mincemeat over the weekend. I highly recommend that.
What's that about?
It's about that spy thing during World War II where they used a dead body to fool the Germans that they were invading Greece when they were really invading Sicily.
Oh, okay. So it's a bit like the man. It's a bit like the man who never was.
Well, it's the same story. It's just retold.
Okay. Fair enough.
And
I read the book.
It's got Colin Firth. Kate.
Are you a Colin Firth fan?
Of course, I am.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, we'll let you off.
But it's good. But this has nothing to do with websites and domains and.
No, we've fallen sideways. Anyway, look.
It's coming soon. The new podcast of talking about films starring Michele Nealon and Jonathan Thomas.
Well, we could do that as well. All right. Look, always good talking to you, Jonathan. We'll talk again. Thanks to any of the poor people who bother tuning in to listen to our podcast. Feel free to give us some feedback in a polite fashion, preferably, and we'll talk to you all again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.